Okay, welcome, Lauren Cecora. I'm very, very excited to have you here. I've heard really great things about you, and I appreciate your time taking the time to be with us. So, to get started, just please give us like an introduction. Where are you from? What you do? Family?
Okay.
Mhm.
I was born and raised on the East Coast, specifically Virginia, not Northern Virginia near like DC, like actual Virginia. I like to do that disclaimer because I didn't grow up anywhere near DC,
Oh,
Alexandria.
okay.
But we are here in Northern California because of my husband's job. He is active duty Air Force, and we have been here for just over 4 years. We have a 20-month-old daughter. Her name is Evelyn, and then two dogs. I was laid off from my second corporate job since moving to California in April. And so I decided to stay home with my daughter and focus on two businesses. One of my businesses, I make t-shirt quilts, and I've been doing that for just over 4 years. And then my other business, I am a health and fitness coach with Beachbody. So
Wow. Tell us more about both your businesses. First start with the t-shirt quotes. That's so cool. I love that.
yeah, so my grandmother quilts, like does those really intricate quilts where, you make designs and beautiful things. And a girlfriend of mine about 6 years ago wanted to make a quilt out of all of her running t-shirts. And she asked me if I could figure out how to do it. And I did. And it was not probably my greatest effort, but I had a lot of fun doing it. And so then for my husband and I do anniversary gifts based on whatever the theme is for that year. And so the second year was cotton. And so I did a t-shirt quilt for him and molded his and my t-shirts from our childhood together into like a couch blanket for us. And so when I started posting about it, a lot of people were actually kind of interested. And so when we moved to California, I was having a hard time finding a job. And so I decided to start my own business selling t-shirt quilts. And so once I went back to work full time, I kind of just did it as a hobby where I would do them like here and there. And then when I found out I was getting laid off, I figured what better way than to like kind of revamp up the business and do it kind of more full-time versus hobby. And then I also decided to jump on board with Beachbody. So
Okay, and tell us about Beachbody and your experience with that.
So I had tried a multi-level marketing company before in college and epically failed at like awful epically, like just stopped showing up for work. And when a girlfriend asked me to start coaching with Beachbody, I blew her off for a few months because at the time I was undergoing postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety after having my daughter. And I was really struggling with my fitness journey because I was not what you would think of when you would think of a nursing mom. Most of my girlfriends were losing weight and they were smaller than they were pre-baby, all because they were nursing. And I was actually the opposite. I was gaining weight. And so I was doing a lot of research on the subject, and I found out that actually more women gain weight while nursing and after a baby than they do lose weight. And so I was having to fight for kind of me losing any sort of weight at all. And I realized that I didn't want to chase after a number on the scale anymore. I wanted to do this just to feel better and to kind of help my overall like mental health and wellness, because I was struggling with anxiety and depression, and that's something I'd never done before. And so I eventually told my girlfriend I would coach because I wound up meeting more and more women that were kind of in a similar place that I was, and I wanted to be able to help them. And it wasn't even about helping them lose weight. It was about them learning to love themselves again and to love what they were capable of and to love their bodies now that we have new bodies now that we have babies. And so
Yeah.
in my own personal struggle, and the rest is history. So
Wow. So yeah, like everything kind of fell into place. Despite you like getting, the job situation, you learned how to overcome that and like be creative, and use the resources that you had and find opportunities. I love that. How was so you were an employee, did you work like 40 hours a week, like this typical 9 to 5 job?
yeah, I mean, I had not 9 to 5. I worked 7 to 4.
Oh,
But I was an hourly full-time employee, and I got paid for overtime, and I had an hour commute on each end. So I was generally gone for like 11 or 12 hours during the day. So they were long days, but I loved my job. And so
yeah.
it wasn't even a matter of I didn't like my job, but I was faced with this huge predicament of I felt like I wasn't around for my daughter because I would wake up at 4:30, wake her up at 5:30. We'd be out of the house by 6. I'd be at work by 7. I'd work until 4, pick her up at 5. We'd be home by 5:30. She'd be in bed by 6. And so I was only ever seeing her for these small, tiny bits of time. And then I was struggling to cook dinner and wash bottles and wash pump supplies and pack the diaper bag and do laundry and do all these things that you have to do. It was incredibly stressful for me. And then my husband doesn't work a normal job. And so most of the time we were ships passing in the wind, or we wouldn't even see each other for days on end because of his shift. And so it was a very lonely, demanding time when I was working full time. And so I was incredibly grateful actually for the layoff, which I know a lot of people probably aren't when they get laid off. But I just felt this huge sigh of relief because I felt like everything that I had been asking for finally kind of came into fruition. And then I was presented with this wonderful opportunity of being able to work from home to kind of build my own income. So it's kind of the best of both worlds for me.
I love that. How do you feel like you maintain like a lifestyle balance?
It's definitely been a trial and error system, but I feel like I have a pretty good system. I mean, there's always ways for improvement. I did the thing where I was always on my phone and always trying to answer messages and take orders and things like that, whether it be for my sewing business or whether it be for Beachbody. And I realized that I wasn't spending quality time with my daughter or my husband. And the sole reason I wanted to stay home was to spend time with my daughter. And so I had to start setting really strict guidelines around my work time. And so I do wake up earlier than my daughter gets up, and that's been an adjustment in itself. So my daughter wakes up at 7 and I wake up at 5, and I kind of use that time to get my head on straight. I generally get like a workout in, do stuff for me, and then I try and stay off my phone as much as possible between when she wakes up and then when she goes down for a nap. And then I crank out as much work as possible during nap time, and then I put my phone away and I spend time cooking dinner and hanging out with her after nap. And then I do a lot of my sewing at night after she goes to bed. And I don't work on the nights that my husband's home. So if my husband happens to be on a night shift, then I'll work those nights because he's not around anyway. But the nights that he's home, I don't do any sort of work. So then that way we can spend time together. So I've had to be very intentional with my time, and I've had to put a lot of focus in my time, but it's been working pretty well for me. So
Yeah, I love that word, intention. And everything you do, it really, do it with intention. And what advice would you give to moms, like entrepreneur moms, or those that are wanting to kind of not have a job and spend more time with their child?
I think I would have 2 pieces of advice. One would be the biggest thing I tell people, even when they're in my challenge groups, when, they want to jump on board with a healthy lifestyle, they get burnt out so easily thinking they have to do everything all at once, right? I mean, think about it. If you were to start working out, generally you're like, I have to work out 7 days a week, and I have to eat right, and I have to drink this amount of water. But if you focus on one piece of the puzzle until you kind of get your feet out from like underneath of you and you're moving along, then add to it. So if you're going to start with something, start small and build on that, and do small things every day over time until you kind of get used to them, and then add on to it. Like, people get so overwhelmed trying to do everything all at once. And that's, I think, why people give up or they get burnt out. But if you just break things down and you do one small thing every single day, then eventually over time, you're going to reap big rewards. It's from the book of The Compound Effect, which I highly recommend to anybody that's going to start doing anything. It's a really good book. And then my second piece of advice would be to give it time. I think when women want to build their own businesses, we live in such a world of instant gratification where we have these kind of ploys in the background saying you should be able to be making lots of money and you should be able to pay back all of your investments and things like that. And with any business, there's obviously a different level of risk and investment depending on the field that you're going into, but I don't think people give it time to truly grow. And I think if you're going to go into your own business, that you need to give it at least a year, if not longer. Like I always tell people when they want to jump on board with coaching to give it at least a year before you really start to evaluate things, because a year will kind of give you a well-rounded of how are things growing, and you can look back when you started and compare it to where you are now. But ultimately, I think like 2-3 years is like a good run for you to actually see whether you're reaping some kind of reward. And I think that that's important to know, is that it's going to be a slow growth, but slow growth is good growth, because that means you have a nice foundation underneath of you. And that means that once you get that good foundation, your business is going to start working for you versus you pouring so much into your business. So.
Yes, it's just being like patient and like just keep being consistent, right? And that's
Yes.
huge too. What's like one of the biggest mistakes you made in the beginning?
I overbooked. So I'll tell you about my quilting business. So when I first started my quilting, I launched it without a plan. You know, I paid for my business license, did all that kind of stuff, and I just kind of marketed it. And then before I knew it, I had 20 boxes of t-shirts sitting in my sewing room. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what? How am I going to like keep track of these? Like, I didn't have a system. I didn't have anything. And I think had I set up like boundaries and really took the time to figure out how much time everything took for me to like get things out, then I would have a better basis. So now I know it takes me like a good 2 to 3 weeks working like 4 days a week for 2 to 3 hours a day to get a quilt out. So now I only take one quilt every 2 months because I'm doing it when my daughter's sleeping, and things come up like she gets sick or I get sick or my husband's work schedule changes or we have obligations that run afterwards or things like that. And so now I'm giving myself time to kind of plan for those things that kind of pop up as like a mother and like a wife that can sometimes happen, to where I'm not getting behind on orders. And I think it was really overwhelming in the beginning because I suddenly had all these t-shirts here and I needed to get them out, and I was promising a 2 to 3 week turnaround time for these people, and there was no way I could physically sew through 20 different quilts. And so I think taking a step back and setting boundaries is like a good thing for people to do.
Yeah, it's like say no sometimes.
Yeah, say no.
How do you practice self-care?
Oh that's my morning routine. Well, so we have 2 things that we do. And I say we because my husband is very much an integral part of me being like successful with what I'm doing. Because without his support, I'm sure I would not be in the place that I am. And I understand and recognize that not everybody has their spouse support. So I'm very lucky in that aspect. But one, I read this book called The Miracle Morning. It's incredible. And I gave it the 30-day try. I read it with a girlfriend and she was like, let's just do it. You know, I thought it was a crock of shit, to be honest. When I first read it, I was like, there is no way that me repeating these positive things in my head every day and like visualizing my day, like there's no way that this stuff is like real. Like this is some crazy hippie voodoo stuff. And I like love it. It makes or breaks my day if I get it in. And so that's why I wake up at 5 and I get dressed like it says in the book. Like I put my workout clothes on and then I spend the next 40 minutes to an hour doing everything. I read, I do my affirmations, I do my meditation, my visualization. I drink hot coffee in silence. It is like the best thing I think a mom could ever do, is to like actually drink hot coffee, but then to be able to sit in silence. And then the next hour I do like my workout. And so for me, that's been key. And there have been days like I'm getting over a sinus infection, so I didn't do it the last couple of days because I just needed rest. And I can tell there's a huge difference in my mood, in my patience level, and my tolerance level with my daughter when I get that morning time and when I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that we also do is my husband and I schedule in 2 personal days a month on our calendar. And so that means that he gets 2 days to pretend as though he doesn't have a family and he can do whatever he wants, like work on his bike or his car or work out or whatever he wants to do. And I get 2 days where either he takes the baby out of the house and I can do whatever I want, or I leave and I go do something with like a girlfriend, or maybe I go run errands without either of them, just getting time alone to where I'm not having to worry about the baby or him or the house and everything else that kind of has to happen. So those are my 2 big self-care items.
I love that. That's huge. And I love that you talked about like not only self-care with yourself and how you explain how you and your husband really work together, and that's really important. I mean, I don't have a man, but eventually.
Mental note for in the future.
How I want to know more about your like coaching business and like what do you deal with, not I don't want to say deal with, but like what have you experienced or learned like with the women, and how do you help them grow?
One of the big things we cover in my groups is personal development. So taking 10 minutes a day for you to either listen to a podcast, read a book, do something that you enjoy like meditation or yoga or things like that, because I feel like the missing piece of the puzzle when it comes to health and fitness is your mindset. And I think that we all start things with good intentions, and your drive will only take you so far. But there are going to be days where you wake up and you don't want to work out, or you don't want to make a smart decision when it comes to food, or saying no to the 3rd glass of wine that you're offered, or things like that. And I think that's where your personal development comes into play, and that you have to have that positive thing to fall back on when life gets hard. I mean, life is never going to be 100% happy and sunshine and roses. We are all going to have dark days, and your personal development can bring you out of that slump so much faster than if you didn't have it at all. And so what brings me joy is when I'm working with people is not at the end of the month when they do their weigh-in and they've lost, 4 inches or 10 pounds or whatever the case may be. It's when they check in and they say that I no longer beat myself up for having a bad day, and I no longer beat myself up for skipping my workout for that day, and I can look in the mirror and I'm starting to love myself again and feel good in the clothes that I'm wearing, and I appreciate what my body can do, versus looking in the mirror and going, God, I wish my thighs were smaller. I wish my hair was something different. Or, I've gained so much weight since having a baby, since having 3 babies. I think we spend so much time in the comparison game and judging ourselves based on like what other people put out in the world, and them having the power for themselves to like look in the mirror and go, damn, I am beautiful, and like actually owning that and not really caring that they're a size 10, or, that their boobs are 12 times bigger than they were pre-baby, or, like their hair is a mess and they have baby spit up all over them and things like that. Like,
it's all about mindset.
It is. It's all about mindset. And so people think it's just that all I do is weight loss, and it's so much more than weight loss. It is. It's so much more.
Yeah. I know you mentioned like your depression that you had after you had your baby girl. What advice would you give to those that are going through depression?
You got to find people to talk to. And it doesn't always have to be like a paid professional. That did work for me to an extent, but I needed people that I could go out and actually live life with and see that they had bad days too. And I think when you become a new mother, you think that everybody is judging you and that you're the only person dealing with those kind of struggles. But if you get out there and you go to the park, or you go for a walk, or you go meet a girlfriend for coffee, you start to see that every other mom is dealing with the same stuff that you are, no matter what their kids are. And so I used to be that person on the outside where I would be in a grocery store and somebody's kid would be screaming and you're like, get the kid under control. Well, now I've been the person in the grocery store with my kids screaming. But instead of me seeing women who are like rolling their eyes and like thinking that I'm a bad parent, instead I'm getting these looks of like encouragement and then like, oh mom, I have been there, like just breathe, or like people trying to like make jokes to like make me laugh or feel better, or, you know, people trying to like uplift me. And I think that that's really important, because I think that if you're going through any sort of depression, and I can only speak on postpartum, you want to close yourself off because you don't want to feel judged. And that's the worst thing that you can do, is to lock yourself up in the house. That's the worst thing that you can possibly do. And so even if it's just getting outside just to change your perspective, it can totally make or break your day. So those would be my two big things, is to find people to talk to, and then to get out of the house. Don't stay in the house.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Well, and last question, it's like a fun question. Name 3 things in nature you find most beautiful.
Oh, the beach. So where we live in California, we do not live near the beach. And I grew up by the water my whole life, and I totally took it for granted. I crossed a huge river every day for work. And I would get to see like the ocean driving to go meet clients. And I took it for granted for years. My whole life I grew up there on the water. And now that we don't live near water, I love it. My soul just feels at home when I'm by the ocean and by the water. And so that's one of my big ones. My other one is those trail paths with like the leaves, like during fall, when all the leaves are like on the ground and
Yes.
you have the sun shining through, and you just have that like soft, warm glow happening. That's like one of my favorite scenes. Like I actually have a painted canvas that I took from my childhood home that's in our house, and my husband hates it, but it's of like a fall dark road, like with all of like the leaves and the colors, and it's just one of those like dirt road. I just love it. Clouds. I know that sounds like so weird, but here in California where we live, we have the most beautiful clouds. And I live by a lot of farm fields, and I used to have to commute an hour, and it was through a lot of like back roads and farm fields and things. And we have the most beautiful clouds here. Like they do different things, and they have different light, and they're just absolutely beautiful, and they make for great photos. Like you could throw anything in the background with like beautiful fluffy white clouds and like blue sky, and everything looks good. So those are probably my 3 favorite things.
I love the clouds. Oh, that's so true. You're right. Well, thank you so much, Lauren. I really appreciate so much great advice. And like, where can people go to contact you, to reach out to you?
Thankfully, my last name is kind of rare. So I actually have a business page on Facebook. It's my name, Lauren Cecora, Cecora is my last name. And so they can go there to connect with me. I do lots of live videos and tips, and I love personal messages and connecting with people. So I never want people to be shy when reaching out. I will talk to anybody. I love it. So the more the merrier.